most people are going to turn on some sort of light source in the evening. They're going to probably watch TV or on the computer or on their phone in the evening. Now, your ancestral brain does not know the difference between the blue light from those devices and the blue light from the sun. So your brain and body is behaving exactly the way it's designed to. It goes, blue light's in the environment, it's daytime, keep this body awake and alert because that's what I'm supposed to do. So our technology is now kind of messing up what's called the circadian rhythm.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode. Hey, welcome to The Exploding Human. My name is Bob Nickman. My guest today is Daniel Ebbetts. He is in New Zealand, and we are going to be talking all about light, natural light, artificial light, blocking blue light, and the effects that all these different types of lighting have on the human body and his own personal story. But first, I would like to invite you to visit my website, theexplodinghuman.com. Over there, you can listen to episodes, read synopses, see photos of my guests, little bio on myself. And you can also listen to episodes on YouTube at The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. As I said, my guest today is Daniel Ebbetts. He's got a really interesting story about what happened to him when he was overly exposed to artificial light and not enough sunlight, and some of the effects it had on his body. It took him quite some time to figure out what was actually going on. And he has created a company which offers a variety of products from different types of glasses to different types of lighting that are optimal for the human body. And we talk about the importance of sunlight and how the circadian rhythm works in the body. It's a really fascinating topic, and there's a lot of problems that people have when they are not exposed to light that is naturally healthy for the body. So here he is. This is Daniel Ebbetts. Daniel, nice to meet you, sir. Glad you're here. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Bob. I'm honored to be here. Looking forward to sharing all things health and light with your audience.
Very good. Yeah, this is the first podcast I've had in New Zealand, so I'm glad I got to go to another country today, another land. So fantastic. So we are going to be talking about light and blue light and what it actually means. And I know, why don't we start with the beginning of how you got into this field? Because it's a really, as I was telling you before the podcast, I have an adverse reaction to fluorescent lights that I've had since I was a kid. So I get what this is. But why don't you tell your story?
Yeah, sure. So for me, it all kind of started around eight to 9 years ago. Fresh out of university, had big aspirations to climb the corporate ladder. And so I left little old New Zealand and moved over to Sydney in Australia, and started working for a large insurance company over there as a graduate. At this time, I considered myself quite into health and wellness. So really a big fan of kind of looking after myself, exercising. I was competing elite level of powerlifting at the time. And yeah, very quickly after starting my job, I started to have quite a few health symptoms pop up. So within the space of a couple of months, I had severe insomnia and severe migraine attacks during the day. And I couldn't quite work out what was going on. So I did what most people sort of do. I'd go to my doctor and sort of get some help. And unfortunately, that kind of very quickly learned that kind of medical system isn't really into kind of root cause analysis. It was more of a band-aid, like how can we, prescribe a drug to essentially make you sleep, which wasn't a very successful attempt after many attempts of off-label prescriptions. I had been through a whole cocktail of different drugs, from antipsychotics to antidepressants to all sorts of things, and ultimately they just made me feel worse, right? So within, over the space of probably 6 months, trying all these different things, I ultimately continued to suffer the migraines and insomnia, to the point where I just had enough of it, had enough of all the prescriptions, because essentially they got to the point where they didn't know, and they were sort of like, well, it's in your head, was one of the terminologies I got back, and I wasn't prepared to accept that. So, I was in the career chosen I went into was IT. So I was working on designing systems and troubleshooting IT systems. So I sort of thought to myself, in my analytical mind, what I applied to my job, I was like, well, let's actually apply that to the human system, right? How can we actually analyze and look at root cause and look at, it was working before and now it's not working as it should. So there's got to be something that's gone wrong in the system. And this is, 9 years ago, and information wasn't as readily available as it is today on the internet. So I was on the internet and I was searching around, and I came across a neurosurgeon in the US called Dr. Jack Kruse. He's probably more widely known now in health and wellness circles, but he wasn't then. But his theories really stuck out to me. He's a big proponent of how light impacts our biology, and how a lot of people were so focused on diet to be healthy, but he ultimately looks at the deeper level of what light does and how it interacts with our biology, and it's such more powerful than what food you eat. And there's a big quote that he said back then that has stuck with me to this day, and it was, health is about light, not food. And that's kind of what I sort of picked up on that, and I ran with that theory and just started to look at my own lifestyle that I was living then. And that certainly, looking at that, there was a significant change in the type of lighting I was exposed to. So I was working in a high-rise building, and under all fluorescent lighting. You talked about fluorescent lighting. When most typical offices or commercial spaces have fluorescent lighting. So that was the first thing. Second thing was, being in IT, I was on screens all day. So I had 2 screens that I would look at for 8 hours under the fluorescent lighting. I would then go from the workplace in the morning, work all day. So I would actually be getting to work before sunrise. So sometimes, so wouldn't actually see any natural light. Then I would leave work and I'd go to the gym to train for 2 hours. And guess what type of lighting was in the gym? Fluorescent lighting. So I was training at night in the evening from like 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And then I'd come home, and then I'd have to work. Being just fresh into the job, you got lumped with all the stuff that was done out of hours. So I'd have to work from probably 11 p.m. till sometimes 1 a.m. in the morning. Again, with all the screens, and had made no association to all this exposure to all this light and what it was doing to my health. But so once I started to learn Jack's work and understand those theories of how light can certainly have different biological changes in the body, I started to apply some of his theories. So one of them was to look at the overexposure to artificial blue light and how much is coming off the artificial light sources from LED backlight screens and fluorescent lightings. There's a high level of that, and there's not many, or the wavelengths of the reds and the yellows and the restorative wavelengths they're not really in those light sources that we get from nature. So I wanted to get a set of glasses. They weren't actually called blue light blocking glasses back then. They didn't really exist, but I found a set of safety glasses brand that could block 95% of blue light. And I was like, well, this is what I need. Couldn't find them in Australia, so I actually found them on Amazon in the US, had to order them in. They took like 3 weeks to come. Started rocking them in the office, these big like welding glasses sort of thing. People just giving me some very odd looks, but the things you do for health and in times of desperation. So that was the first thing that started to actually have an impact and a profound change in my symptoms and my overall health. So from there, it was a good 3 to 4 months of applying the principles of removing certain frequencies of light and getting exposure to other frequencies that I started to turn my health around. And yeah, I just decided that I wanted to yeah, I didn't want to create a business out of it or anything like that, but I thought, oh well, there's got to be more people like me. I can't be the only ones, and I didn't really want everyone else to have to go through the exercises of what I went through. So I just started importing the safety glasses and just selling them to people that I could help. But there wasn't really too many people listening to this back then. It was so I was deemed quite crazy and a little bit of this weird guy that wears these strange glasses. But I guess persistence and watching the evolution into the digital age, right? We've all got devices now. We've got tablets and iPhones and smart devices and these LED lighting in our homes that it's become such a necessity to actually look at what I'd call our light hygiene and how we manage our light environment. So naturally, the business that I created 7 years ago has just evolved as I've evolved my knowledge, and then just heavily looked into product development and how we can actually produce products to help people interface with the technology that we're now living with.
I love the term light hygiene. That's a really interesting way to look at it, because it, you know, when you think about it, all day long you're interacting with the world with certain senses, and eyesight is right up there at the top. And it is so interesting that I guess some people are more sensitive than others to harsh lighting, what I would call harsh lighting, like fluorescent lighting. I was telling you that earlier that even when I was a kid, I couldn't stand being in a room with fluorescent lights. It would make me agitated, confused. It hurt my eyes. It made me a little nauseous and kind of angry, actually. I'd feel like, and I still have that. If I go into a room with fluorescent lights, I start getting pissed off. Like, right. So it makes my mood shitty. So I'm kind of like, this does not feel right. And you try to tell that to an adult when you're a kid, and they just think, they look at you like, you know, what are you talking about? They didn't get it. Actually, some of them emit sound too.
Yeah.
Like a weird, and to a little kid with really fine hearing, you can hear that sound. At least I could. So it was very disorienting. It doesn't surprise me that it would affect sleep in the worst possible way.
Yeah, I can actually talk to a bit of the science behind why you felt like that, because with fluorescence specifically, because there's some clear, again, biological pathways that happen in the body based on the type of light that you're being exposed to. So it's kind of, there's a few things. So the first thing which I alluded to was more around the frequencies of the light spectral output. So fluorescent lights have an extreme unnatural spectrum of light that comes out of them. So they're very, very high spike in the blue light spectrum. Now that particular frequency, once it enters the eyes, it's designed to interface with some non-visual photoreceptors in the eye called melanopsin receptors. Those receptors are designed to be activated under blue light and essentially send a signal to your brain that it's daytime. But when it's overactivated through too much blue light, it will raise your cortisol. So it's designed to raise your cortisol level, which is a wakefulness hormone, or typically known as a stress hormone. So in the right balance, it's cortisol is very beneficial to us for the daytime. It makes us awake, alert, motivated, and able to function during the day. But when you get too much of that, if you get stimulated too much through the receptors, you elevate that far too high, which puts you in essentially a state of stress. So that can give you a state of agitation, anxiety, different feelings such as anger can be one of those as well. So that's the first thing. The next thing around why you potentially feel nauseous. Now, fluorescent lights are notorious for what we call flicker in them. So flicker is not necessarily, sometimes you can see it, which is actually really bad. Most of it what we deem as invisible flicker. And what that is the light source is turning off and on very, very quickly. Your eyes may not perceive it because the eyes, the frames per second that the eye can see or process is quite a bit lower than the actual frequency that it's flickering at. But your brain is having to sit there and process an image, a light probably turning off and on about 120 times a second. Now that's just neurological overload, neurological stress to the brain. It's having to work overtime to deliver to you so you can actually make sense of what that image is without it turning off and on. In nature, there's no such thing as a flickering light. The sun is a direct light source. It's either on or it's off. If anything's flickering, it just induces a stress response to the body again. But it can also, in severe cases of flickering, will trigger epileptic fits in people, for example, who are ultra sensitive to it. If you think about a strobe light, people can't handle that sort of lighting. This is a low level version of that, where your brain is, so it can make you nauseous. And then you've got a recipe of all these different things in the light source that are actually not biologically appropriate for humans to be exposed to indoors.
It's amazing how we as human beings think we're moving forward with all these inventions, and we're, the further we get away from our natural state, it seems like the more problems we cause. We get some great benefits. Obviously, we have electric lights and we can do things at night that we, human beings used to not be able to do. So I guess on that side, it's great, but maybe we're not supposed to be up at night doing work, and we're supposed to be sleeping. That's the rhythm of the animal that we are. So I don't know. It's I'm up at night. I watch TV. I have a computer. I have a phone. I have all that stuff. But I do notice if I'm I'm sure most people have this. If they watch TV before they go to sleep, or they're on the computer, the sleep can be very superficial and not very deep for at least for a while. I noticed that. So what are some of the worst sources of these artificial lights, and what are some of the ways we can mitigate some of these issues that people might have? Because I'm sure there's people listening to this that go, oh, that's what's been going on.
There's a lot of them now in today's world, just the world we've moved into with the use of LED technology. So LED stands for light emitting diode. It's a more energy efficient technology that's now being predominantly used in common light sources, from your overhead lighting in your house to everywhere. So traditionally, 10 years ago, we used heat source type lighting. So that was incandescent and halogen, which had a filament inside the light source that electricity would heat that filament up. It would produce both heat and light. And that type of light was relatively biologically appropriate. It was a full spectrum of light. It was very similar. It had very low levels of blue, and it had very, very high levels of the red and the infrared spectrum in it. And then in the name of sustainability or energy efficiency, to make sure we're looking after the planet, governments had this great idea that we should ban this type of lighting because it's consuming too much power, and the life expectancy of the light bulbs is not very long, so the replacement cycle is a lot higher, so material usage is higher. So in the name of that, we should all move to these much more energy efficient light sources that can run for much longer periods of time. However, at the same time, they never considered, whilst we're looking after the planet, potentially we're not looking after the humans on it, right? Or not just the humans, all living things on it are actually impacted by this. So the LED spectrum, very similar to the fluorescent spectrum, very, very high in that blue light. So that's the biggest sources we're getting in our homes, but then we've also got our phone screens, our TVs. These are all now LED backlit sources, so they're all using that same spectrum. So pretty much any kind of now light source, the car headlights, street headlights, just everywhere. So everywhere and anything now is normally an LED backlit source. So why is that such an issue? It's an issue at light time because that type of blue light, essentially when we go back to nature, the only natural source of blue light is coming from the sun. So the sun sets in the evening. we're not supposed to biologically receive any blue light post sunset, because when blue light is absent from the environment, that then tells our brain it's nighttime. That will then lower or suppress down your cortisol levels and allow your melatonin levels to rise. So melatonin is a sleep hormone. It will only elevate in the absence of blue light. So if you turn all your lights on, none of us live in the dark. So most people are going to turn on some sort of light source in the evening. They're going to probably watch TV or on the computer or on their phone in the evening. Now your ancestral brain does not know the difference between the blue light from those devices and the blue light from the sun. So your brain and body is behaving exactly the way it's designed to. It goes, blue light's in the environment, it's daytime, keep this body awake and alert because that's what I'm supposed to do. So our technology is now kind of messing up what's called the circadian rhythm, which is your brain and body is designed to work off a 24-hour cycle of day and night. But we're just telling our brain it's constantly daytime. And so what that does is you have all those light sources on in the evening. It keeps your melatonin levels suppressed and your cortisol levels high. So it keeps you awake. So if that was actually all eliminated in the evening, people would start feeling a lot tighter a lot sooner and probably go to bed a lot earlier. So you're artificially keeping yourself stimulated with blue light.
I'm wondering if there's some kind of I guess maybe that's what you're doing, is figuring out a way to have light that doesn't do those things. That isn't harmful.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably two things. One is to block the blue light at the wrong time, and the other is to mimic natural lighting with artificial lighting. Like the full spectrum lights that some people that they sell.
Yeah, so there's two. It's twofold. You've got to look at the both situations, the time of the day, and what type of lighting you should be exposed to. So during the daytime, we should be exposed to similar spectrums till we get outdoors. So the sun emits full spectrum light. What's full spectrum light? Well, it's balance. So it's got all the colors of the rainbow. It's got the blue, green, yellow, orange, and red, and relatively, it varies during the day, but relatively equal amounts. So we've talked about how bad blue light is. Well, it's not actually bad for you at the right time of the day in the right balance. Blue light during the daytime, in balance with full spectrum light, keeps you awake, alert. It also induces neurotransmitters called serotonin and dopamine, which heavily regulate your mood and your energy levels. So people that typically are low mood or have depressive symptoms will have low serotonin and low dopamine. And so one of the common depressive symptoms is called SAD, or seasonal affective disorder, typically seen in winter because they don't get outside and get enough natural light, enough natural blue light. So full spectrum light, very good for us during the day. Very hard for us to get indoors because all our windows, they actually filter out different spectrums of light. They change the spectrum, and then most of us indoors will be using an artificial light source. What artificial light source do we use? We use LED light sources. They're not full spectrum. Now, full spectrum lighting does exist. We've created one because we decided that there was a need in the marketplace for this, because in some instances, it's necessary indoors because it's a low lit room or there's not enough. So you'll need some kind of lighting indoors. So it's important to ensure that ideally you're getting that full spectrum light to ensure that you are regulating your mood and energy levels. An interesting thing, this is getting a little bit sciencey, but so serotonin, which is what should I say, this stimulated through blue light during the day, is actually a precursor to the formation of melatonin. So melatonin is actually created through serotonin through biological processes in the body. So if you don't actually have optimal levels of serotonin built up from your light exposure during the day, it won't matter how much what you do at night to do correctly to release melatonin. You don't have the raw material, the precursor up the chain to actually make it. So that's why it's very important what you do both day and night for ultimately the human system to align to nature with its light cycles. When you move into nighttime, so that's a different story. And what you sort of asked was like, well, yeah, is there talked about how all the lighting we use is causing this? Well, surely there's a way we can make it so it isn't, right? And if we go back and you think about before electricity was invented, well, what did humans didn't go to bed as soon as the sun set. They did use light sources in the evening. It was typically fire. So first of all, if we go back right before the advent of electricity, it would have been lanterns and candles. And what color are they? Well, they're a warm ambery yellow hue. They don't actually have any blue light in them. If we go back to caveman days, it would have been a cave like a fire in the cave, right? So yellows, orange, and reds, not coming from overhead either, and no blue or green light in them. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, well, is that the answer? Probably not, because it's not so practical, is it? Like, like we do live in a modern, in now 2023, like there are ways we can use technology to simulate the same effects with lighting. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to look at, okay, well, can we create an LED light source that's energy efficient, that's long life, that ticks all those boxes, but looks at those things that are wrong with it, that are interfacing with and causing unwanted effects to us, and go, well, let's actually strip out all that blue light frequency and make it so then it's an artificial produced fire, kind of the light source of a fire, and let's use that in the evening.
So that's what you've been working on.
Correct. Yep. And that's what we've got.
Tell me what your products are. We've arrived at a great moment here in this podcast. A solution.
Yeah. Well, so if I kind of tell back to my story about how I use the glasses and to kind of mitigate these effects, well, and that's what we did for a number of years. We created different lenses that you could put on at nighttime, and it would filter those light frequencies out. So then what was entering your eyes was a filtered light source that didn't have that in there anymore. And that's what we still sell those, and they're very popular, and they do serve their purpose. But then we started looking and going, well, what happens if, like, you didn't need to filter it because it wasn't there in the first place, So that's what we started researching lighting and said, well, okay, well, let's start like working out how to manufacture light bulbs and what the components are, and then what we need to change in the components to make it what we want. So that's what we did. So we've created all types of various light bulbs now for different fittings. So the idea is you can now, there's lots of different lights out there, fittings and ways we use different types of lights. So we've tried to create from your typical screw-in light bulbs to ones for lamps and all sorts of hosts of different lighting products that kind of conform to those principles. One is, we talked about flicker. We have removed the flicker in them, which is just, it's very complex in terms of engineering, but it can be done. It just costs more money, and that's why most lighting manufacturers don't do it, because it's a thing of, if you can't see it, it's not a thing kind of thing, and most people can't really make that link. So we produce what we call flicker-free lighting, and then we look at the spectrums and we produce lighting for the evening, has all the blue light removed from it. Lighting for the daytime has blue light in it in full spectrum with all the other spectrums. And then we did something really cool and said, well, how about we actually interface both of them together? Because you've got a day bulb and you've got a night bulb. It's like, well, when it's daytime, are you going to go like change put them in, and it's nighttime, I'm going to take all the day bulbs out and put night ones in? And it's not very a convenient solution. So we actually were able to put both of them together, and you can just switch between the different modes based on the time of the day.
When you think about frequency, and you think about, most people think about frequency when they think about sound and vibration, but it's true, light is also the same thing, right? It vibrates at a certain frequency. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense that if certain sounds make you feel better or worse, that why wouldn't light do the same exact thing? Because it's just another frequency. The body either responds positively to or the other way. I wonder how many people are losing sleep over this very simple thing that they could do. It must be a lot.
Well, that's even from what I experienced, right? When I went to my doctor to complain of my symptoms, there was no discussion of okay, like, what's your lifestyle and what are you doing? It's just, okay, what prescription drug can we throw at this? Crazy different drugs that had the most craziest amount of side effects on me, when all the solution was putting on a pair of glasses, a $20 pair of glasses.
Shouldn't that be one of the things that medical schools do right from the beginning? when they talk about your interaction with patients is, what is your lifestyle? Tell me where you live, what goes on, what's your daily life, what is your diet, where do you work, what are you around in terms of sound, light, smells, toxins, all that kind of stuff can really add to the ability to diagnose somebody correctly, because a lot of this stuff is just so, like in your case, it was so simple.
It's a tricky one and that's why I think I alluded to at the start. I think the medical system in that model is a little bit broken because they've got 10 minutes with you.
It's a lot broken.
Yeah, so it's like 10 minutes to figure out what drug to give you, essentially, is what it is. And that's why we're talking now, and that's what I do now, is to try and bring some more awareness to what can be a serious health issue.
Wow. So how do people find you and find these products? Because I know there's got to be a fantastic website with these things. And what goes on over there at that website?
Yeah, so you'll find our website at blockbluelight.com. So nice and simple to remember. And what goes on over there, we've got all sorts of educational stuff, like a lot of blog posts around all the issues surrounding it, and tried to extrapolate and explain things a bit more. We've got a whole host of products on there. We've got the glasses I talked about. We've even got the set of glasses that I originally used as well, the nice big ugly ones, but we also have some that are a little bit more stylish, different lenses for different times of the day. We explain when you want to use this one and when you want to use that one. And then we've got all those lighting products I talked about. So we've got all different types of light bulbs, night lights, book lights, lamps, motion lights, strip lights. So if someone's really into it, they can really deck out their whole house with all the right type of lighting. So they're getting the right types in the right places at the right time of the day.
Well, so you can actually go there, folks, and educate yourself even more than what we're doing right now. It's very specific blog posts on this stuff. Anything else you would like to discuss?
Yeah, I'd say just one piece of advice, if people can take away something, because another cheap and free thing that's easy to implement is just get outside in the morning and get some natural light to the morning. It's going to tell your brain it's the morning, natural light. Don't look at the phone screen first thing. That's telling your brain it's midday. That's not naturally telling it it's 7 or 8 a.m. when you get up. So that's one of the easiest things to implement, and it's going to have if you do that as a routine habit, it forms that habit of anchoring it every day. And that's going to have a really, really profound impact on your energy levels and mood and sleep.
It's so funny because I was going to say that's how I was going to end the podcast. Like, get out in the morning and go outside, because it's absolutely free. That's what I do in the morning. I have a cat that I feed outside. So when I get up and I go out there, and I just kind of hang out and give the cat some cat food, and I take in that early morning light. I don't know why I do it. That's just what I do because it feels right. I guess that's why I do it. Yeah. And there's a lot of value in just being, the human animal, getting up and going outside. It feels good. So a lot of this stuff is just about paying attention to your body and how it feels in different situations. I want to thank you for your time and your wonderful work. And I love the fact that you took something of your own struggle and turned it into something positive for hundreds of thousands of people across the planet, I'm hoping. Big thanks to you, Daniel Ebbetts.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, Bob.
Much thanks to you folks for listening to The Exploding Human. Please check out the website, theexplodinghuman.com, the YouTube channel, The Exploding Human with Bob Nickman. And I want to thank my guest today, Daniel Ebbetts, and you can find him on the internet. I will put a link in the description. Thanks so much. Have a fantastic day.